Now we'll get into the running Q&A. So the first question is, what is your running schedule? Well, my running schedule typically consists of running 6 days a week. Right now I'm only doing 5, and that's because most of the summer I've actually been only running 5 days, and I figured we're approaching the winter time. Why bother kicking up in 6 days? And plus, my full marathon training is coming up in December as well. And for that, I'm only going to be running the low mileage because this is my first time running a marathon. So it's only consists of running 4 days per week. So I figure there's no point kicking up to 6 days at this point if I'm going to just kick it back down to 4. Once the marathon's over, that first month I'll run 5 days a week, and then once we hit June, that'll be like a month after the marathon, I'll kick it back up to 6 days a week. So what my schedule usually consists of is Mondays I'll run 4 miles that day at a pretty easy pace. Then Tuesdays I'll run quarter-mile intervals, and by the end of like the summer or so, it's usually up to about 12 quarter-mile intervals. So that equals a 3 miles, so a 5K race. It gives you enough speed and stamina to last there. Where I get my endurance from is on Wednesdays and Thursdays. I do my long runs on that day. Typically, I'll run 8 miles on Wednesdays, 6 miles on Thursdays. So I hit my peak at the middle of the week and then start tapering off near the end of the week. And then right now, it's Friday is my off day, but otherwise I'll run like a really light 3-mile easy run that day just so my legs stay loose. And then Saturdays is typically my race day. So that's usually what I do for my running schedule. If I don't have to have a race on Saturdays, I'll try to get in like a 3-mile tempo run instead of doing intervals again. That way I can get another speed run in that's just a little bit different to give me a little bit more endurance and stamina along the way. The second question is what is your worst run ever? What is your best run ever? Well, for this question, we're going to base this not off of just races, but we're going to base it off of like training runs as well. Probably the worst run I ever did weather-wise, I'm going to start off like that, is probably back in high school when I was doing actually a quarter-mile interval workout. I think I was doing like 8 quarter-mile intervals this day, and it was spring break here in Michigan, and it was still really cold and really damp and rainy. But this day was just like unbelievably like bad. It was like in the 40s. It was like 25-mile-an-hour winds. It was raining, downpouring, might I add you. And the practices were optional, but I didn't want to like just sit around all spring break and do nothing. So I wanted to make sure I get my runs in. So I went out and did this quarter-mile interval workout. And I was like freezing cold after this. I mean, the sun came out a little bit during the day, but not during the run. But it was just, rainy, windy, cold. I ended up completing the workout and actually ended up finishing with, at around the time I was supposed to be running. And even some of them were under the time. And I was really surprised, especially with the way the weather was that day. But that's probably the worst weather I've ever had to run in. Worst run ever, I'm going to probably say was the first time I ever ran the Kalamazoo Classic. It's a completely flat and downhill course, which is an easy course. But before the race, I hadn't been feeling all that well. My throat was really dry. For some reason, I had the craving for bacon. And I like bacon, but I don't know why I had that craving like before the race. And my shoe came untied like a quarter mile into the run, so I had to like stop and tie my shoe. I had to stop walking this race because like my throat was so dry. I couldn't like run anymore. I had to like walk to like the water stop. It was not a good race. I couldn't run fast at all. I ran like a 25-minute 5K, which at that time for me was bad because I had already gotten back down into like the 21s. So it wasn't a good time. Best run ever also happens to be at the Kalamazoo Classic. A couple years ago, I was running and I completely forgot my watch before the race. So I had no idea what time I was running. But my first mile was like super fast. I was keeping up with some of the faster runners that I know. Second mile was good as well. And I started in the third mile, notice they're starting to get a little bit farther away from me and in front of me. And that's like the whole last mile is like downhill. And downhills I typically don't run that well. But anyways, I was able to keep up with them most of the way. And we're coming to the finish line. We turned toward it, and I could only see part of the clock. And at that time, it was only the minutes part. and it said like 18, and I'm like thinking, I've never broken 20 minutes in a race before. Am I going to break not only 19 but 18? Well, that didn't happen, but it was close. I crossed the line. 19:08 was my time. It was a fantastic race. I've ran, I think, 2 or 3 other races in under 19s, or in under 20, I should say. Around, I think the best after that is probably like a 19:45. So we're looking, hopefully, at some point to break 20s on a consistent basis if I can continue the speed work up. Okay, third question. What's the difference between running now versus when you ran in high school as part of a team? Back in the day when I ran in high school, it was a whole lot different because you're part of a team. So you have, all your teammates cheering you on. You have all your teammates to run with during the race. You have a coach, or during your race, during your runs. You have coaches to give you the mileage, to tell you what to do. So it's a lot different back then because of the fact you're being told exactly what to do, and it's like, you have to do it. And I mean, it's not like I was like fighting like I didn't want to like run. I mean, obviously I love running. I wanted to do it. But the difference between then and now is now it's all on you. I mean, I'm not part of a team now. It's all on myself whether I want to get out there and run on a daily basis. And that's why, like I said, I set out a running schedule for me every week to run and to make sure I get out there and run. I always tell myself, okay, I'm out of work for the day. It's time to go for a run. If it's my day off, it's like, okay, now is the time to go for a run. Well, that's, either early morning or late morning is typically when I run on my days off, or if I have to work in the evening, that's the same time I'll run, is either early morning or late morning. But it's more about persevering. It's all about doing it for yourself now instead of doing it for a team, doing it for your coaches. You're running for yourself, for the benefits that you want to run for. And there's like 5 different benefits I have for running. And one is I love running. That's number one. Number 2 is I love racing. I love competing every week for the most part in racing. Most of the time I don't get a chance to do that during the wintertime, but I love racing. Number 3 is I love getting those medals if I placed in the top 3 in an age group. I mean, it's always nice to get an award when you're done running. Even if you don't get an award and you ran a good time, at least you have that memory. Number 4 is I like to stay in shape, stay fit, stay healthy. And the 5th one is I just love meeting all the new people at races and running. It's just such a great feeling meeting all these people, different people from the Kalamazoo runners groups that I get to be a part of. So that's just a nice feeling to be able to be a part of that and meet all them and see them at most of the races and talk to them about what's going on and running and life and things in general. 4th question is how many races do you run typically in a year? Well, typically during a year, I calculated this in my head a little bit a while ago, and from what I'm guessing is I do about 25 to 30 races a year, depending on what kind of races I end up doing, like beginning of the year. Like this year, I ran a little bit less because I was doing a half marathon in May, so I didn't get a chance to run a couple of races in April, a couple of races in March, and I know there's one in February I didn't get a chance to run in as well. I've ran more races in the fall this time, so I think I've kind of equaled it out. So about 25 5K races a year, I would say. And then I would say I typically like to do 3 10K races just to challenge myself a little bit as well. And then, of course, I do the Myers State Games. I do the mile and the half mile up there. And then there's the run to climax 7K. So there's a couple of oddity distances races in there as well. But typically 25 to 30 races total a year is what I do. So not one every week because, like I said, around here in the wintertime, it's typically hard to find a race to do. But once you get to like March all the way through October and even November, there's a lot of races that you can run, and typically I run one a weekend once we get into those months. The question number 5 is how did you get into running? Well, this goes back to actually what I was talking about earlier in the video when I got injured at basketball camp, because I was actually planning on playing football. And I mean, you look at me, it's like, okay, I'm like a skinny guy, I weigh 145 pounds. Back then I was like 120. If I play football, and I'm going to end up getting like hurt like bad. I wanted to play wide receiver because of the fact in gym class I had done well playing wide receiver, caught a lot of touchdown passes, so I figured maybe I could do that in high school. Well, then when I got injured, I was unable to compete in any of the activities or that they'd done over the summer, the weightlifting, any of the football drills. So I decided I'm not going to go out for football. It's just not going to work out. It's not going to be my thing that I'm going to get to do. I'm still going to enjoy watching it, but I just won't be able to play in it. Well, so that's when I got into running because the cross country coach, Mr. Brad Portis, ended up calling me up and said, "Hey, do you want to come out and do cross country?" Because he ends up getting the list of the athletes that don't end up going out for the sport that they had intended to sign up for or ended up getting cut from a team. He typically goes after them to see, "Hey, I know you didn't get to play in this sport. Do you want to come out and run with us?" And I was like, "Well, heck, I want to do a sport," so I figured, and my parents want me to do a sport, so I'll go out and do running. So the first day I got there, I ended up running like a 1.25 mile, and this was back in August of 2006, and I had gym shoes, or like basketball shoes. So I ran in those, and then after that, I was able to go out and get running shoes. And at that time, I wasn't very fast. I was running like 9, 10 minute miles at the best, and the races I was running like half an hour, got down to 25 minutes, but ever since then I really enjoyed running. And then it was like in the spring, it's like, yeah, let's do track, let's do that as well. And then from there on, it just continued cycling, doing cross country, doing track, getting to be friends with all the runners, and then doing it after high school as well. I continued that, stopped in 2000, at the end of 2008 and all of 2009, just became too busy with college at that point, and then started it back up in 2010 in the winter time, and about, I think, March. I tried to start in January, but I ended up getting like a sinus infection, so I had to get over that. Then I restarted it in March, and then the first run I ended up doing was the Borges Run for the Health of it in 2010, and ever since then I've been back running, and I don't plan to stop anytime soon, unless of course I have to because of I get old. But that's a long ways down the road, thank goodness. So won't have to worry about that. We have a lot of long years of running ahead of us, and I look forward to it. So everybody, thanks for tuning in to this running Q&A. Hopefully you have enjoyed it, and thank you for subscribing to my channel. And if you haven't subscribed, you can subscribe to my channel for more content up in the corner. Follow me on Twitter. I'll post a link to that in the description below. That way you can get updates on when my videos are coming out. And if you subscribe to me on YouTube as well, you'll also get updated on when my videos are coming out. This is Michael Loudon, over and out for this running Q&A. I forgot one more thing. If there's any other questions you'd like to ask me about running, feel free to post those in the comments section below. Also, you can hit me up on Twitter with those questions, and I can do a future Q&A once again about running.